Most television shows tend to air their episodes in a chronological order, a sequence of events that is to be experienced with a beginning, a middle, and an end, in a timeline that makes sense. It's just a normal way of doing things, a normal show for a normal viewing experience. At first glance, Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends may appear to be a regular, straightforward show about talking steam engines on the island of Sodor, with each episode taking place after the one before it. There may be some jumps in time between episodes, but generally you'd think it'd just be one straight line. However, while watching it, you may start to notice some oddities regarding the timeline of events. These are just the ones I could think of, but if there's any more, please let me know in the comments below. It starts off innocently enough, with Thomas and Gordon, the first episode of the whole show. We're introduced to two of the main characters, and also see other engines working in the background, like Henry and James. Things go smoothly for the next 6 episodes, and Thomas learns to be less crap at his job. That's the gist of it. Then we get to episode 7, Thomas and the Breakdown Train. After his previous mistakes, Thomas gets to save the day by helping out James, who has come off the tracks. Thomas gets his own branch line and the story moves on. In the next episode, James and the Coaches, we're told that the accident of the previous episode happened on James's first day. Wait, hang on. We've seen James in like 6 episodes before Thomas and the Breakdown Train. How does that work? One explanation could be that Thomas and the Breakdown Train actually takes place before those other episodes. But hang on again. That episode is meant to be a victory for Thomas after his mishaps from before. It's like an arc. He does something bad, he does something bad, he does something bad, and then he does something good and he gets rewarded for it. This muddles things a bit, but oh no, it only gets worse from here. The 25th episode of Series 1 is Down the Mine, where after the events of Off the Rails, Thomas teases Gordon and then basically ends up falling down a mine shaft. It ends with Gordon pulling Thomas away from the mine and the two making themselves allies. The episode after that is Thomas's Christmas party, where nothing is mentioned about the incident. Remember this for later. Series 2 has the episode Percy Takes the Plunge, which is actually a personal favourite of mine. Percy tells Bill and Ben, who haven't been introduced yet by the way, about a time where he got stuck in water but bravely pushed on, and they are very impressed at him. He gets a bit conceited and ends up getting pushed into the harbour by trucks, and then needs to be pulled out at the end. During the rescue scene, we also see a black diesel in the background. Thomas also mentions that he fell down a mine once, which makes sense because, that was in Series 1, this was in Series 2. It happened before it. We'll still come back to this. So, 2 things here. 1, we see Diesel there, who hasn't been introduced yet. We see Bill and Ben too, but it's possible they just haven't been named yet. Diesel wouldn't be formally added to the show until the next episode after this, Pop Goes the Diesel. I don't think this is too egregious, because maybe that shot of him in the background was just him travelling to the sheds to meet the engines for the first time. He was just on his way, and he happened to be passing. The biggest head scratcher is the story that Percy tells Bill and Ben. This, of course, hasn't happened yet in the show, unless every time I watch Series 2 I just fall asleep and miss it. These events wouldn't be shown until Series 3, in the second episode, titled Percys Promise. So, this means that at least one episode of Series 2 takes place after one episode of Series 3. How much of it? Is there some chunk of Series 3 that takes place during 2? What's going on? This opens the floodgates. Pun intended. Series 4 by far has the biggest head scratcher, which is what made me think of making this video. The episode Paint Pots and Queens opens with Thomas and Gordon returning home from falling down the mine, which happened back in Series 1, which aired 12 years before. Bloody hell, that's a bit of a gap, isn't it? Wait, Duck is there? Donald too? What? So let me get this straight here. This is meant to take place right after a Series 1 episode, but with characters that weren't introduced until Series 2? The events of Down the Mine are mentioned in Percy Takes the Plunge, which means that this place must take place sometime during Season 2, but that episode took place after something that happened in Series 3, and oh, my head hurts. This leads me to the conclusion that unless episodes are strictly meant to be viewed in sequence, the episodes of Thomas and Friends are not usually in a defined chronological sequence, and you can pretty much watch most episodes in any weird order. Unless they include characters that have been introduced yet, then you can just do whatever. Just don't let the change in sets and picture quality and, general design put you off. Thomas telling the narrow gauge stories at the start of Series 4 could very easily just take place during Series 2, after Duck has arrived. I haven't even mentioned that some episodes are plucked from the books about a certain character and dubbed somewhere else. In Trouble in the Shed, Henry is one of the engines that goes on strike, and in the show he doesn't really have any meaningful event that causes this, other than not wanting to shunt stuff around. In the book, it was the elephant in the tunnel incident which led him to do so, an episode that wouldn't be adapted until Series 4. This is because in the book, the things that happen to Gordon, Henry and James are all together, and then Trouble in the Shed happens afterwards, but in the show it was a bit mixed up. So if you really wanted to, you could slot Henry and the elephant in between Thomas and Bertie and then Tenders and Turntables, and it would still, make sense. The Series 4 episode Bullseyes is meant to take place during Percy's predicament in Series 2, since it's referenced near the end of the episode. Maybe it would be good making an actual chronological watch order for the show and just seeing how weird that turns out. That would be fun. Now, on a more serious note, I'm well aware that pretty much all of these have a simple explanation. This just happens sometimes during production. Models are needed for shots to make the railway look more busy, or certain episodes would have been more difficult to film until later on. Percy's Promise was planned to be in Series 2, but they just couldn't do it. A lot of work went into making the show, and decisions had to be made for the sake of getting it finished. I'm sure if they could have, then they would have made these stories flow better in a way that made sense, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. We still got an absolute banger of a show. Thank you for watching and tune in next time.